Welcome back to the channel, guys. I decided to do something a little different for this video and combine it with my review of the Lectron Xcelerator Rod for the Billetron. It arrived late last week, just in time to get it installed for this ride. So this was the first ride that it was in the YZ. This clip is at the end of our ride on Burma Road single, and the Xcelerator Rod did seem a little more responsive than the standard rod. For those unfamiliar with the Xcelerator, it's Lectron's standard metering rod with a small orifice in the back to provide a burst of fuel during quick throttle openings to match the influx of additional air. I should sort of define what I mean by responsive. You can hear the YZ bogging down. It is a 125, so still a lot of clutch work involved on a 125, but it didn't seem like I had to feather the clutch as much. More just a little more throttle, and it would really help me collect that power. So I'm sure if you're watching this video, you have seen at least 1 or 10 of Rich Larson's videos, and he's always talking about collecting power over and over, and it really seemed to help me do that in situations where maybe I'm used to stalling or feathering the clutch a lot. It seemed as long as I committed to opening the throttle a little bit more, it would be there, that power would be there ready for me to use. It did take a little bit of getting used to. I'm still not completely used to it yet, but it did seem to help in those areas. Definitely shines a lot more out in the open areas, the doubles where you can pick up some speed. Definitely had a mid to top end kick, more so than it normally did. I know when I put the high compression head on this, it sort of took away the power band of the bike, but that kind of feels like it's back with the Xcelerator rod, and I definitely still have a little bit of tinkering to do with it. I had my other rod tuned what I would consider to be almost perfectly, but this one, we're not quite there yet, so I'll have to keep playing with it. I have it about a quarter turn leaner now for this particular trail than I did the rest of the day. That does seem to help a little bit. Early in the day it seemed a little rich, having a few issues idling down hills, but that's just, you know, some small fine tuning. The other rod that I had in there, the factory rod, is tuned just about perfectly, and maybe I got a little too used to that, a little spoiled by that. But you can hear how this thing really bogs through some of this stuff. Sometimes I swear it's not even running, but you know, it definitely still is. I think I may have created the boggiest 125 out there, and you know, it's easy to say get a 300, get a real enduro bike, but there's just something that's a little more fun, I think, about riding a 125. They say 125s make you a better rider. I definitely learned a lot on it. I still have a lot to learn, but you know, just the clutch work involved in general, you don't always have that fallback of just opening the throttle a little bit, but that Xcelerator ride kind of seems to help with that. So it's about as 300 of a 125, I think, as you can get the way I have it set up right now. And for anyone interested in getting a Lectron, if you were to buy a Lectron today, whether it's the H series or the Billetron, I believe that those already come with the Xcelerator rod installed. Don't quote me on that. Lectron's not paying me. They're not. I don't know everything about them, but from what I could see in my research, it looks like the Xcelerator rod is a standard rod now, versus when I got mine, which was in 2023. It just comes with the normal rod, and the Xcelerator rod was an additional $130. It comes pre-installed in a slide, so it's more or less drop in. You don't have to really do anything with it aside from put it in. And Lectron recommends during the install to adjust the rod the amount of turns that you adjusted your original rod. So when you fill out the form to purchase a Billetron, they ask what you ride, how you ride, your ratio if you're a two-stroke, bunch of information to help tune that rod as closely to your needs as possible. And I don't even remember where mine started. I just know what it measures now. So I mic'd it. It was 2 point something inches off the top of my head. I can't remember exactly what that number was, but that's how I modeled the accelerator rod when I put it in. So put it up against the mic, dropped it in. That is against Lectron's recommendation, just because of variances in the slide and the rod. It's possible that doing an exact length measurement is going to give you a different number in the end. And basically I was just too excited to get it when it showed up. I wanted to install it, plus it was starting to get a little bit later. Wanted to make sure I had enough time to do it. It's not a hard job, but I have other things to do as well. So if I were to take it out and reinstall it, I would maybe follow Lectron's guidelines on that, but it really doesn't seem like it's in a bad place now. Not sure where Scott went here. He fell off trail for a little bit. We'll catch up with him in a moment. But just overall, as boggy as this thing already was, the ability to really tractor through stuff, I think this does help just a little bit. Earlier in the day we were behind the parking lot, past the coal piles that looks like they're starting to get torn down, and back in some of that area I was in third, which I've never run a single, really for any amount of time, in third on this. Try to stay in second, and it seemed like it was doing it as long as I could commit to opening the throttle more so than feathering the clutch, because of course I'm used to just kind of tapping the clutch, always having 2 fingers ready, just to hit it, get a little bit of RPMs build up again. But running it back in third back there did seem like it was okay. I did spend most of the day in second, and I think I spent all of this trail in second as well. Maybe first in some area, but nothing's really coming to mind. Most of it in second. So I guess the question is, after all of this, is it worth it? I would say for the type of riding that I do, which is this stuff, you know, if you're watching this is probably the kind of stuff you're doing too. For this slower stuff, I would say probably not. Out in the open, if you were racing, maybe you only do this stuff sometimes, hair scrambles or whatever, maybe a little bit faster pace stuff, I would say yeah, definitely get it. Now the Lectron itself, I'll always say 100% belongs on every bike. I absolutely love that carb. It just seems to work better, it idles better, it just runs better. Fuel economy is insane. So I only rode this with the factory key-in on it for one ride. I was at Locust Gap the very first day I ever took this thing out anywhere. And ever since then I had the Lectron on it. And where I used to use maybe 1.5 gallons, 2 gallons of fuel, I'm using maybe 2 or 3 liters with the Lectron. So insane fuel economy. I feel like, I mean, I could easily go all day on a tank. But when we stop for lunch, I top off just because, but I probably don't have to. Just, I mean, the fuel economy itself is worth it. Really, if you ride a lot, if you ride once a week in, you know, a year and a half maybe, your fuel savings will pay for your Lectron. You never have to jet it, you never have to touch anything really. Once you get it where you like it, it just works. But as far as the accelerator rod goes, like I said earlier, that is something that comes pre-installed in the new ones. So if you were to get a Lectron today, you're getting the accelerator rod anyway. But if you were on the fence on whether or not you wanted to get one for your current Lectron, if you didn't have one already installed like I did, for this stuff I would say it's not worth the money. But if you are racing, motocross, anything faster than this really, then yeah, it definitely provided a noticeable difference, I think, in the way the bike performed. So that's all I really have. I'll leave the last 2 minutes here in silence as we take this thing back to the parking lot. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope to see you on the next one.